let's get started. So a lot of what we talk about when we talk about sessions and we talk about the types of audiences and categories and things that we want to discuss here, we say innovation, entrepreneurship, education, social progress. And I think, one of the things we see often is that we confuse invention and innovation. And invention is those creation of new things, where innovation can take many, many forms. You can have incremental innovation where you are just, iterating on top of something that exists. I think the evolution of the automobile is a great example of, how various innovations over time have led to the vehicles we have today. Or you can have disruptive innovation, something that completely changes, and completely replaces something else that already existed, or completely changes the way something happens. So one of the things that we want to focus on are that broad spectrum of innovation and innovations that happen. And in particular, one of the things we've been focused on with sessions is the innovation that needs to and is occurring within our educational systems. And so had the opportunity to meet Jessica and hear a little bit about what she's doing and the work that's happened, and thought this would be, a fantastic topic for us to engage in here at Sessions. So thank you very much for joining us this evening and having this conversation. I'm anxious to get into kind of what you're doing and how you see the world. But before we do that, tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Kevin. So my name is Jessica Auld. I am the founder of Cultured Education. I am a veteran teacher. I have been in the classroom for 7 years. I was a bank manager. But before I was a bank manager, I became a certified emergency manager for the state of Missouri through FEMA. So when I went into education, I was a bank manager, and a man came in and he asked me for help to fill out an application. I am a very chill person. Everybody that knows me knows my favorite thing to laugh. He asked me to help him fill out the application. I was like, no, really, tell me what's going on. Like on the low, I'll help you fill out the application, but what's happening that you need my help? And it was shocking to me to look at a grown man, and he was like, I can't read. And it was in that moment that I knew that I was on the wrong side of the fence, and I wanted to be a part of the solution. So I quit my fancy bank job. I left my great benefits behind, and what I thought, I'm going to go infiltrate the education system and change the world, just like millions of other teachers in the world all start there. Well, once I got into the system, I realized that it was very large, and it's very, very, very difficult to make any changes. The first year I observed the system. I watched to see what was in place. I traveled through all the schools in KCPS. I also made an amazing network of teachers across the world, in Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Canada, all through the world. These educators all across the United States and other countries started inviting me in. And we started having a conversation on the low. It was almost like Teacher Fight Club, whine about it. You don't disclose which school you work at or use any real names. We all just sat down and had an actual dialogue about the issues in education. Year 2, I started sitting down, and that's the year that I realized that teachers were crying. And they were not just crying, they also were throwing chairs. They were getting mad. Things were happening to them. And year 2, I realized, okay, this is harder than I thought, because I thought I was going to just save the world in one big swoop. Well, it turns out that takes a toll on your spirit. So that year is the year that I saw the first teacher throw the chair across the room. And I thought, whoa, what's happening that somebody got this mad? Then year 3, I got to find out. Because I, too, was in a classroom, and I realized what it's like to have 28 human beings to keep alive all day, and really sitting down and taking a deep look at myself. That's the year that I realized the custodian was my best friend. He was going to cover for me when I cried in the hallway. He was also going to make sure that everything was cleaned up in my classroom. Year 4, I went to the drawing board, and I came up with programming. So as a bank manager, part of your You start coming up with trainings, programmings, and implementation, process implementation. So what I sat down and I started offering hype coaching for teachers, and literally sitting down and saying, okay, what trainings do you want? See, in regular workplaces, and you get trainings, you get to have conversations, you get social and emotional trainings at work, you get diversity training. Teachers get training in how to teach math, how to teach reading. We need you to build relationships, and they slide a book right on over to you that you have to read when you get off work. So I was shocked. One, I was like, there's no time to read said book. How will I build relationships? I have 70 students. So what I did was that year, I designed a system with professional developments and started offering it for new teachers. That's year 4. And I got some feedback on my professional developments. They wanted more. They said to me, the district started saying, we want you to present on all these different topics on social and emotional wellness for employees. We, as a structure, want to start encompassing our employees' wellness and trainings. So I started putting together trainings, mindfulness trainings, stress coping trainings, trauma trainings, and I started presenting these not just at my school, but I started presenting in California and Mexico. I went into the classrooms and said to teachers, the only thing nobody ever says to them, what can I do to help you? Literally a teacher's magic words. What can I do to help you? I don't want to slide you a book. I don't want to make your life harder. I literally just want to help. And the responses I got were higher pay. Imagine that.
Sure.
I can't fix the system of financial, pay, but I can start addressing workplace culture through microaggressions at work with your coworkers, through social and emotional mindset shifts. Like, how are we dealing with the trauma of the students? It transfers on to us. So in my work with cultured education, I have found social and emotional learning, which is something that we normally would teach children, right? Everybody that's got a kid here in school has heard social and emotional learning. It's life skills, or AKA how to manage your emotions. There's all these buzzwords that it's gone through. But at the end of the day, I realized nobody was teaching the adults and the parents how to model this. So, for instance, the students would look at me and I would be saying to them, put your emotions in check. And for me, I'm thinking, you're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You know how to do this, right? They did not. So then I started meeting the previous teachers. I started talking to teachers. How are you coping with your emotions? And basically, a couple of things came out. Partying was one way. They like to go out and party. 2, baths at night, we're told, is self-care. Drinking wine was a big solution.
Drinking wine in baths sounds like a... Yeah.
Drinking wine in the bath was often the solution. What I found was there was never a conversation about our educators' social and emotional wellness. Like, we were being asked and slid a book on how to teach children, but a lot of times those same educators did not know how to regulate their own emotions. So here we are, and I found that educators wanted that. They wanted to become better teachers. They wanted to become better fathers. They wanted to become better friends, and they just needed help learning how to regulate their own emotions. And that led to more retention in the classroom. They were able to set healthy boundaries for themselves, saying, okay, it's 5 o'clock. My computer turns off. I need time to regroup and rest. As a teacher, there's never enough hours in the day. Like, I'm going to tell you, literally every minute of the day is planned for you. So asking a teacher, saying, do self-care. After you've worked 12 hours with 25 kids, self-care is not an option. When you get home, you want to get in the bathtub and drink that wine because now it's 9 o'clock and you've got your own kids to tend to. So the shocking thing for me is nobody had ever taught these selfless humans self-care. They were being told, take care of themselves. Well, they spent all their time, both males and females in the classroom, taking care of everyone else besides themselves. They were literally advocating for every single other person besides themselves. So setting healthy boundaries, saying, I don't feel like my best self. I'll come back to this.
And Jessica, a lot of the, professional development, continuing education we see for teachers is probably very curriculum based or very
academic.
It's very like on the subject matter or maybe even teaching methods, those types of things, but it's not on this kind of their own ability to manage the trauma, their ability to manage kind of the situations that teaching puts them in, especially as they deal with maybe, at-risk youth or, last week we had a conversation with Kyle Hollins about the relationship that's required between a teacher and a student and how impactful that is on a student's ability to learn. But that requires the teacher to have a relationship as well and to be able to manage that relationship in a healthy way as well. So that's what kind of the curriculum, or that's kind of what you're talking about here. Is that?
Yes, but when we say build relationships, when you have 70 students, you are asked to build a relationship with a ridiculous amount of people per day. So if you've ever talked, who in here has talked to 70 people today? Anybody seen 70 people? Anybody seen 50 people? How about 25? Craig, go get yourself something from the box. So imagine 70 people coming in and out every day out of your classroom. So building those relationships is great, right? But how are you going to build those relationships? And that's a lot of where Cultured Education has packaged. I have packaged up a model to show teachers how quick and easy at the start of their day they can start to build those relationships with students. And the relationships is a big part, but that's tying into classroom management. That's usually like you need to have a relationship when a student's in trouble. I'm talking about your relationship with yourself. How are you modeling your self-regulation when you're going to get mad? So that's the trainings that like are not out there, because what there are is teach them reading. Guided reading trainings are prevalent. Then there's the math trainings, the curriculum trainings, but nobody's sitting down and teaching, okay, you're going to come in contact with these students. The trauma is going to come in. New teachers, they're told in the beginning, hey, how are you taking care of yourself at home? Are you managing yourself? But then after that, when they actually get in a classroom and that starts to happen, that's why we're at the teacher shortage we are now, is nobody is actually modeling what it looks like to take care of self. So for instance, I found myself going into classrooms across the world and teachers were crying and they were disappointed and they were yelling and they were screaming at students. That is their direct response emotionally to what's happening. Here is how like my coaching and my experience goes is when I would get mad, because I'm not perfect. I'm a human being too. I know I look very nice today. 98% of the time I'm nice. 2% of the time I have human experiences. I would get mad as well. And here's what it would look like. I would go right over to that calm down corner, the same one I asked them to use. I would get that, pop it out. I will start popping away instead of yelling at them. And then when I was ready, they would come up and obviously try to talk to me before I was ready. And I would say, I need a few minutes. And I would give them tasks to work on. And I would say, I need a few minutes to take care of myself before I make a mistake. And a lot of teachers, they are martyrs and they are beautiful, self-giving people, but they will not create that space for themselves, which leads to the teacher burnout. We all go in thinking we're going to save the world. And then what happens to us is we realize the reality of, okay, it's been 7 years, it's been 8 years, it's been 20 years, and now my family's left. I've gotten divorced. I don't know my children because I've spent so much time building relationships with these other students. I don't know my family. And so creating that safe space to actually be an employee, it retains teachers. Now, I do have a fun game. Let me see if I can find my... Okay, now, this is a fun game called Your Would You Rather, and I do have giveaways over there. If you're an educator, go ahead and head over to the black box so you can pick out something. It's not for anybody else but you. Keep it for yourself. So would you rather chaperone a school dance? Think about prom. Or chaperone an overnight event for school? Which one, Kevin?
I'm going to go with the school dance.
What for?
Because this sounds like a lot more chaperoning would be required than the school dance.
You don't think they're going to try to slip something in the punch?
Better than the slipping in that might happen over here. So I'm going to go with the chaperone school dance.
Hey, I'm with it. Anybody else want to chime in? Which one would you rather? You get a prize for participation. Nobody? Oh, school dance? Okay, we'll go over and pick something out of the black box. There's options in there. But yeah, I'm going to go with, I don't know, the overnight event could be lit, but I feel like I'm not going to sleep at all because I'm going to have to patrol the hallways all night long.
Now, which one would I rather attend as a student? I'm going to go with but like the chaperone is the operative word in this, right?
As the adult. So like as a student, we'd all rather go on the trip. Spoiler alert, as teachers, you end up going on both of these. It's so much fun to have to patrol those halls and make sure our high schoolers are safe in their rooms. From about 7 p.m. to about 2 in the morning. You need to check their doors and check their beds.
Thanks.
Making sure they are safe. But yes, these are both things that all teachers, well, not elementary school teachers, well, unless they have an overnight event at the school, are asked.
That looks like Craig teaching me how to dance.
I thought that too. That's how come that video made the slide.
Yeah.
We would never roast you. But that's why it made it to the slide, as I thought of Craig when I saw it. So what are some of the benefits of social and emotional skills? So a lot of times, like Kyle Hollins, like he provides mentorships and outlets for the youth to find jobs. So, and he models those social and emotional benefits for the students. Like I've had some conversations with him. His and I's go directly together. So the social and emotional benefits, which is what we model as adults. So children learn love between like the ages of 0 and 7. I learned that from him. And when we think back to your first teacher. Sit down and think about, what do you remember about your first teacher? Do you remember the math they taught you? Or do you remember the Skittles on their desk? The way they dressed, the way they hugged you, the way they loved you. And so the social and emotional skills, when we teach teachers, especially in today's burnout, how to love and what healthy self-care looks like, we're teaching our students that. What's your first memory, Kevin, of your teacher?
Oh, wow. It was a long time ago. My first memories of teachers were like the experience in the classroom. It wasn't any of the material that I was taught. I mean, to your point, it was like the environment in, like that first grade classroom of, what it was like and I'm trying to think of I'm terrible with my teachers' names, like any of them, all the way even through college. But it's more about the experience that I remember.
Yeah, and we all remember Miss Titus was my first teacher. My first teacher I remembered, and she always gave me candy. And she knew that my home situation was really bad, so Miss Titus would oftentimes give me her lunch. And then when I went and I got a little bit older, I was the only black kid in my school, like literally with a little tiny fro. And I was the only black kid. So all the kids like kind of picked on me. Also, I like to chew gum and wear short skirts.
Oh, you can't chew gum in school?
I think you can. I did every day. And I made it right to that detention every day after school. And then I was labeled the bad kid. See, a lot of the stories that I've heard from the teachers is they all have this happy experience of the education system. They became a teacher because somebody was a great teacher for them. Mine was the exact opposite. I came back to circle back for those kids that were bad kids. There's no such thing as a bad kid. There's a kid that's got a roots. They don't know. They've never had somebody take the time to slow down and be patient. So I circled back, and literally they used to call me the leader of the Bad Kids Club. Because if you couldn't deal with that kid and you were going to kick them out, okay, send them over here. They are still entitled to an education. Please don't ruin it for the rest of their lives. Like, I will, they are welcome. When I taught in the middle schools, kids were there on truancy. They had been court ordered. Cool. If you here to learn, go ahead and pull up. If you snuck in from somebody else's class, go ahead and sit yourself in the middle. Like, I'm glad you're not fighting in the hall. But every kid deserves an education. The problem as educators is we're not understanding of every kid isn't going to receive that education the exact same way. And when we start thinking ourselves, it's a bias within us. We all know somebody we don't like, right? Now imagine that same person being in your classroom every single day for 365 days a year. And you have to look at them every day and give them an equal opportunity. It doesn't happen very often. I have had children spit in my face. I have had my shoulder dislocated twice. I have had my car keyed. I have had children break everything in my classroom. I have had children laugh in my face when I am crying. And the key word there is children. These are not people that are old enough to know what a Blockbuster is. They have not had a flip phone. They have not had life experiences. What they've seen in their version of love looks like physical violence. It looks like hurtful words. Because if they act out enough, they realize, okay, she's gonna show me love in some way, in the way I understand it. What they didn't realize is that Miss A has unconditional love. You spit in my face, that's cool. Like, I'm going to take a few minutes and you're going to go sit over there until I get myself right. But I don't respond out of anger. And a lot of our educators, in fair disclose, you got parents wanting to fight you, the parents fighting the bus drivers, you got kids fighting in the classroom. And it's a cycle because nobody can manage conflict without physical violence. And that is exactly what I'm trying to undo.
It seems like a lot of that would be kind of the inherent. I'm sorry, somebody is calling.
It's okay.
It's this guy who keeps calling. His name is Scam Likely. I don't know if he's ever called you before.
He has.
But he keeps calling me
from
back.
Oregon.
Apparently, it's really important. So a lot of the things that you're talking about, it seems like they would need to be inherent traits in an individual as a teacher. How do you teach the things that you're talking about? Like what's the program that you've developed, or how do you teach the things that you're talking about and not have it be something that is like built into the the EQ or built into like the DNA of teachers? Because it's extremely difficult what you're talking about.
It is, and it's a lifestyle and a mindset shift. It's no different than you trying to teach employees at work how to manage their emotions with coworkers. So it's not impossible to teach. Teachers just don't get the right trainings, which is what I'm undoing.
Okay.
So a lot of that looks like giving them resources. So my programming looks like 1, 3, 10-month and 12-month professional developments. One, I give teachers real-life resources to use for daily social and emotional instruction for students. That's about this much of what I do. It's 20 minutes. It's already put together. They don't have to read any books. They deliver that content. But on the back side of that, every month I go into schools and I sit down and we have a emotional regulation conversation. So what that looks like is 1 month, it's all focus on self, like social and emotional learning for adults. Are you breathing before you respond? Mindfulness can't be measured. So to your point, some of these traits people aren't picking up, but anybody with a growth mindset and is willing to learn a new way of living, they're the ones picking it up, and the strategies work. So every month I go in with a new toolkit and say, hey, I see that, you're going through this trauma. You're having a lot of behavior issues in your class. This might be your last day here, and I love you for that. But also, can you try some of these resources before you just cut it down? So breathing. So, for instance, I don't know if we can play video. Can we play video?
Oh, we can try.
Which button plays videos?
Oh, I don't know. You've got me.
What's
on
the
this
top
one.
button do? I haven't pressed that one yet.
Give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
Anybody want to take a bet on? I don't know. That might be the power.
I probably. Well, what do you know?
It's the middle button. So, for instance, this is one of the strategies that I take. It's 3 collective breaths before you respond. So, for instance, when I was an educator, immediately I wanted to pop off. And I think the first year I might have done it twice, maybe 4 times, if we're being honest. But instead of immediate response, taking 3 collective breaths. And it looks like this: breathing in and exhaling out 3 times. And literally, before you do anything in that situation, you take 3 collective breaths. You take a moment and you breathe before you respond and before you say anything to your administration, to the student, to anyone. You stop and say, I'm not feeling my best self right now. I need to take a few breaths and I will come back to this. It's an immediate stop. And you are stopping the conversation. I'm not feeling my best self. I'm going to take a breath. So that's a lot of what I teach. Breathing strategies, also what to do when you're angry, what's okay to say when you're angry. So when you're angry, we oftentimes want to lash out and accuse everybody else. You did this to me. It's your fault. These things. How do we mindfully take accountability, but also say, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm going to go ahead and go over there and think about this and then come back to you later. So mindful responses towards coworkers and also towards ourselves. So here's some examples, and I know that this is kind of small writing. So 27% more students would improve their academic performance at the end of the program. Now, when I started talking about this programming, because 4 years ago when I started collecting data, people thought I was crazy. When I started talking to leadership about maybe we should get to know these students and their families, they were like, no, we pay you to teach math and reading. You don't need, they learn that in kindergarten. They learn all that, how to be a good friend, kindness in kindergarten. But the problem is some kids did not, because I would get them in my class and they'd be like, you keep saying use kind words. What's a kind word? What do I say? And we live in a digital age. These kids are growing up on TikTok, GTA. I will log in and track them down.
I don't doubt that.
It's very real. But they're learning GTA. Nobody's modeling it for them. So people like Kyle, they go in and model it for the students. The other half of that is the teachers who have not learned that. We've got new teachers that are 23, 22, 21, have never had children, going in, learning classroom management, learning how to relate to kids that oftentimes don't look like them. So they don't know, one, that the kids don't know kind words. So they're in there like, oh, what happened here? Because in suburban schools, kids learn how to be a kind friend. But in urban schools, in urban core, oftentimes it's math and reading because we need test scores. So they're not learning those same skill sets. And then when they get to 6th grade and you've got a 23-year-old teacher that comes in, they think they already know. So then they're mad because they think they know what to do. And they honestly don't. So it takes modeling for a teacher to start at a base level. What is a kind word? What are expectations?
I feel like the incidence of some of the things that you're describing are starting to increase at an alarming rate in suburban schools as well. Like you still, and historically we would take, the bad kids and we would, they would be in ISS or they would be, shoved aside as well.
Kids that need modeling.
And they were, right. And they were overlooked and so on. And so one of the things that strikes me as you're going through this is, why isn't this taught as a, in the teaching profession, when people are getting degrees as educators? Why aren't things like this, or are they things like this taught to as like a baseline capability of a teacher, regardless of what your subject matter is?
So that is a great question. I have often asked what that looks like, and the responses I get is UMKC put together a urban core initiative for educators. So what they do is they have real world, and I had some of them come through my classroom. They have students come in and they do student teaching with teachers. Their junior year in college, they come in and they learn from teachers. But what's not being taught to them is, how are you going to cope when you don't want to be there anymore? So you can't just walk out in the middle of the day when you have kids all day long. Well, some people do, but it's not a good look, because then the kids now have abandonment trauma because their teacher walked out and they're so bad. They think they're so bad, they made their teacher quit. And now they have sat down and they think, okay, well, whoever comes in here next, we're going to do our best. And so why isn't it being taught? Funding. This is mindfulness can't be measured. A lot of when I started talking about this, because when I went into education, I was shocked. I was like, the bank gives us yoga classes. We have a fitness studio, and educators, they work 12 hours a day. The first time I was asked to stay until 7 p.m. after starting work at 8 a.m., I was like, wait a minute, like, am I starting work later, or like, are we taking some hours off tomorrow? And they were like, nope, the kids need you and you need to be here.
Well, I mean, they pay you so much money as a teacher. You should be willing to stick around, right?
Yeah.
Different issue. I know you said you couldn't fix that earlier.
I cannot fix the pay gap. There needs to be a fix. I cannot fix it.
So just because I'm looking at this, the statistics, the data that you have here, are these, when you reference the SEL program in this instance, is this an SEL version that is provided to the student side? Or are these the metrics of what it looks like when the teachers get, like, I guess maybe help me understand
Both.
that. Okay.
So these are the metrics. So this is the 2011 meta-analysis. So what this is this is when teachers get direction on how to give direct instruction to students by modeling and what direct instruction looks like. Because the one thing that every educator, I think we can all agree on, is we don't want to wait until the kid's in trouble and that be the first moment that we talk about, this is what we do when we feel triggered. Because at that point, he or she are non-binary, but they may not respond. That's when they don't respond. So these data is when you give direct instruction to adults on how to manage their emotion, because you would think that adults would know, right? But who's watched the news lately? If you raise your hand, you get a prize. Anybody watch the news? Yeah. Do you think that adults have emotional regulation?
That's a different session. We'll have some other time.
Okay.
But the quick answer is no. I think we have as many issues
Yeah,
as
because I saw a Spirit Airlines employee whole fighting on the internet and was like, you can't figure out how to resolve this conflict without putting your hands on people. So a lot of times what happens is adults, it's a system that has, I know that this system is way more efficient than me, but it's been in place for so long that it's almost impossible to start undoing it unless we get both the adults and the children.
So if this isn't taught in, kind of the standard, educational curriculum for teachers who are being taught to teach, and it seems, and maybe this is where I'm off, this seems as if it's a high touch opportunity to teach people these skills and to go through this. How do you scale this?
Okay, so like, for instance, teacher retention. If you can't give, it's HR 101. If you can't give your employees a raise, you need to make sure they want to be at work. Like, you need to make sure your workplace is a place that employees are happy. HR 101 says that if you cannot give the employee more money, which we know we can't, you need to improve workplace culture. So therefore, by improving teacher mindset, they want to come to work more because they're also working with other people that have improved their mindset. Every educator I know will tell you they don't come to work for the pay. We're definitely not there for the pay. We come for each other because, one, you feel teacher guilt. I'm feeling it now because my teaching cohorts are going back to the classroom, and I've chosen to take 5 years off to work on this, and then I'll go back to the classroom. But they feel guilt. They go to work for their peers. And a lot of that has to do with their heart. Like, they love what they do, but it can't be measured through direct data. It's measured through student success, one. So are your truancy down? Are kids coming to school? Do they look happy in the classroom? Are they receiving a relationship from their teacher that makes them want to be there? Are they learning that math because they want to learn from you as a person? Do they feel comfortable there? And a lot of times, like, I'm finding a lot of success with suspension rates. One, lowering the suspension rate. Two, teachers are wanting to come to work more because they're creating distance and boundaries for themselves. And three, the student outlook. How are you coping? Are you fighting still on the bus? Is it worth it for you? How are you dealing and resolving conflict with adults? And that's where I'm finding most of my data and my success, because mindfulness, like I told you, is a newer concept.
Right.
So you can't go back 20 years and ask teachers to teach now life skills. That's why my programming is built into every moment of a teacher's day. There's themes through every month. So like in the month of August, I just sent out to 6 schools and piloting community building, which looks like day lessons. I sent them out 2 weeks of a calendar. They click on the link, their slides are already put together, and throughout the day, they remind their students, this is where we sit, this is where our stuff goes, this is how we build a community. In between, short little snippets. I don't want to make their life harder. I want to be a part of the solution. So giving them a resource and saying, use this as you will. You can use it after lunch. You can use it after specials. However you want to use it, it's there for you and already done, not another book.
Right. It seems like in this time of the great resignation, if you will, and I know there's a lot of debate about where we stand in the jobs market and where things stand from that perspective, but we certainly know, there's a labor shortage in particular fields. We know teachers and nurses in particular have been hit very hard from the pandemic and from just the general nature. This seems a lot like if you offer this to a teacher, this seems like at least I'm being seen.
Yes, and that's the part. As an educator, all I wanted somebody to say to me, I never heard it. I still haven't heard it. How can I help you? Can I do something for you? How can I make your life easier? Never. In all the time I was an educator, nobody ever said to me, I want to do something that will make your life easier, especially in those curriculum meetings. The curriculum meetings looked like, here's another book that you got to read after work today and it's due tomorrow. Pandemic, that's a great point. A lot of us during the pandemic, we left for spring break. I sent my kids home with their stuff because I was going to bleach everything. But we were still all posting Drake memes with toilet paper. Anybody? Yeah, you all remember that? We all thought it was a joke. It was not. And so I had to learn how to use Google Slides in 12 hours because we were asked to start direct instruction 2 weeks after spring break. Who knew what alternative modes of instruction meant? I didn't. I was like, what do you mean put together 5,000 packets and print them off and figure out how the kids are going to turn them in? And a lot of educators, we just sat down and we scrambled, but we did what educators do. We made it work. We went through, and then we had parents roasting us. Educators are lazy. You're not taking care of my kids all day. Well, we were trying to give instruction, but also not die. We didn't want to get sick either. And then parents, they didn't want to teach their kids. And for us, we had 12 hours to put together stuff for you even to do at home. And so that took a toll.
So cultured education,
Mm-hmm.
is this and maybe we should have started, is this a nonprofit? Is this a for-profit? I mean, how are you approaching, you said you're taking 5 years off to work on this.
Mm-hmm.
How are you approaching the development, delivery, and execution of kind of this mission you're on now?
That's a great question. So I got my nonprofit paperwork in 2021. I started working on it in 2019 when people were thinking, we're not going to talk about the social and emotional wellness. You need to be teaching math. I thought to myself, okay, well, if nobody's going to give me a seat at the table, I'll bring the table and the chairs. So I got my nonprofit certification. Paperwork finally came through in 2021 after a year of waiting for the IRS, #pandemic life. And so then now I'm piloting in 4 schools. I actually just accepted 2 more schools because the teachers that I met along the way were like, we really need help. So I've been funding it out of my pocket. Recently, I've gone to a gala. Shout out to you, Craig. Went to a gala. I am learning how to network. My social anxiety is also real, so I am learning.
I think you should stick around for this next panel, too.
Yeah.
That may be a good idea.
So I am learning how to network. I am going and I'm talking to funders about presenting, advocating for teachers now, because everybody advocates for students, right? But serving our teachers is now where I'm advocating. I want to do another little box giveaway. Is it okay?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do another would you rather. Would you rather administer, let's see if I got the slide. I think it should be up next. Let's get these. Would you rather proctor a 3-hour test or grade test for 3 hours? Yep, Damian.
Grade test.
Grade test for 3 hours? There's like 150, man.
Yeah.
And you have to look at each one and know the right answers.
Wow. See, I would have gone with the proctor a 3-hour test. Yeah.
Go get something out of the box.
Yeah, no, wrong answer is what I'm being told right now.
No, it's not the wrong answer. So which one would you rather do?
I don't, I'm not a teacher, but it feels to me like proctor at 3 hours. Like I always have the old movies where the person's sitting there, not paying attention while people are taking the test. That would be me.
I love it. All the Yard House servers know my name because I literally would sit in the Yard House for about 6 hours grading tests on Sundays. They kept on bringing food.
But if this is like the same last trick question that you asked,
you do
the
both.
answer is you have to do both.
As an educator, we do both. We proctor 3-hour test for, let's see, there's 5 days of testing. It's almost 2 weeks of testing during MAP season. So you proctor a test for not just 3 hours, it's 8 hours of walking around. And you literally stand around and watch kids take a test on a computer. And you cannot have your phone or smartwatch because you cannot, like that's cheating. You're also going to grade test for way more than 3 hours. Like that's impossible. You're going to be grading for eternity.
I guess I never understood that you can't have a phone. I mean, I guess today I don't understand that you can't have a phone thing because in life you can have a phone. So it seems like you should be able to have a phone when you're taking a test. It's like that's testing your life proficiency.
I love that, but you're about.
I'm saying, like, can I use my phone to quickly get this answer within the 3 hours? And if so, you passed life.
I love it because
that's how it works.
I feel like yes, and I'm on your side for that. But the Department of Education is about 25 years behind you to where they're still saying things to a kids in urban core about swimming 4 laps in a swimming pool and how many yards is it? And they're like, we don't even know how to swim. What's a lap?
Yeah, I'm not going to die on the you should have a phone in the test hill on this one, but it just seems logical to me.
Maybe Googling what a lap is and that would be the answer.
Yeah, there you go.
So why aren't we teaching social and emotional learning? This is what you asked. A lot of districts are lack a sight of funding because they're spending things on their social and emotional skills for students, PBIS, they're spending incentives there. They're also spending money on, their SPED department, getting paras in the classrooms to support students because I had 25 of them. One year I had 30. The legal limit in Missouri is you can have 33. And then you have to have a second person, and then there's no limit. So they're spending money on paras. They're spending money on more, support for the behavior concerns that we're having now because there's a lot of fighting. They're spending money on gun violence. They're spending money on preventing security guards, metal detectors, a lot of these things. And so 40% of districts indicate they had a lack of time. That was very real. When you're an educator, minute to minute, I literally had a schedule all day long of where we would be at each second of the day. And I had a timer that would time how long it would take me to be there and how long it would take me to get there. So, and then 38% of teachers aren't sure how to teach social and emotional learning. They had no idea that that's the book that was slid over and said, hey, we need you to build a relationship. And the teachers were like, I don't even have time to eat lunch.
So we're getting close to time. How can we help you? What do you need from the community? So you've said you've never been asked. You can't say that anymore.
I know.
So,
I have to take that line back.
Yeah. How can I help you? How can we help you?
Well, one of the ways that you can help me is one, if you're an educator, I brought a box of self-care. Don't take anything for kids. Take one for yourself. Or if you educate businesses on how to get better, please go get something. Or if you have helped somebody, a child or a youth in your life, please go get something.
I got to say, you just made me think of something. So I have, in the last 48 hours, have mentored 2 startup founders on this very issue in how to deal with employees as they grow teams, how to deal with managers who are dealing with employees, and this is like the very same
It's the
topic.
exact same thing, and that's why like cultured education has 2 branches, in schools and also at work. So that's a beautiful thing. If you've mentored somebody, please go and get yourself something out of there.
Save some of this stuff in the box because I've earned a few.
I brought plenty of stuff.
All right.
But also, the way that you can support me is, one, I'm going to advocate for every one of the educators I know and don't know. This doesn't stop with me. This begins with me, and it goes through you. So if you know an educator, one, they need school supplies. They have to buy it out of their pockets a lot of times for those students that don't bring it. So give them something. 2, I am a hype coach. I literally hype people up. I am notorious for it. And I have become the teacher hype coach. I am that person that still gets 1 a.m. calls like, I'm going to call in sick tomorrow. I can't do this anymore. And I don't talk them down from the ledge. I make them feel heard. So listen to your educator friends when they're telling you. You may not understand everything they're saying, but at least say, I understand this is hard, and be understanding and be a voice for them. Because what we don't want to do, and what I find so many people doing, is saying, we need more from the schools. We need more from these teachers. Instead, ask them, what can I give you? How can I help you in your purpose? That's how the community can help me.
Well, I thank you for being here tonight. I thank you for sharing your story with us and sharing the work that you're doing. Thank you for the work you're doing as well. It's much appreciated. And I think all of us are starting to understand that if we're going to change the trajectory of education in this country, the teachers have to be an important part of that. And so I definitely appreciate kind of the mission you're on and the work that you're doing. And you'll have to come back and tell us how it's going.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. Thank you for having me. Thank all of you for listening. I usually incorporate stretching. It didn't seem like the right vibe here because you guys have been sitting for a long time, but thank you for having me. If you've mentored somebody, or if you've helped somebody, or if you just even sent some local money to a school, please feel free. There's a black box next to Joe over there. You can grab something out of there. There is gifts for adults. It's just for you. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Absolutely. My pleasure. This is usually when I tell everybody that they need to go get a drink or some more food, but some of you can maybe go back in this corner and do some stretching with Jessica. Maybe that's maybe now we have an alternative. So thank you so much again for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.